Welcome to July's Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, and I'm going to pass over to Chief Executive for roll call and apologies.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. To all members of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the committee, which will be held today in the Council Chamber, Guildhall, Monday, 15th of July at 4 o'clock. Alderman Cook, Alderman Hussey, Alderman Wilkinson, Councillor Boggs, Councillor Donnelly,
Shot.
Councillor Sandra Duffy, Councillor Farrell,
Apologies.
Councillor Heaney,
Shot.
Councillor Jackson,
Shot.
Councillor McDaid, Councillor McGinley, Councillor Mooney,
Here.
Councillor Farrell, and Councillor Tierney.
Apologies.
Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, John. Moving on now to the broadcasting statement. I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting that the meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The broadcast may be determined or may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. If you're seated in the lower public seating area, it's possible that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility that your image will become part of the broadcast. By entering the council chamber and using the press or lower seating area, you're consenting to being filmed and consenting to the use and storage of these images for broadcasting and training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making these records available to the public. If you wish to avoid this, you should move to the upper public gallery. A copy of the council privacy notice may be found on the council website. So moving on now, I note Alderman Cook has joined the meeting. Moving on now to chairperson's business. I haven't been contacted by anybody in relation to chairperson's business for today. I have one item from my own, and it's just in relation to the Foyle Cup. Just to congratulate everybody that's been part of the organisation of the Foyle Cup. I know it's been acknowledged numerous times in this council chamber at various committees, and I know council have endorsed the Foyle Cup by providing significant support in kind and financial contributions as well. But I know today marks the initial launch of the tournament itself. We had a parade where there was hundreds of teams that were gathered in our city. The buzz and excitement around the place was there to be seen by all. I know there's a lot of excited children that have been building up to this exciting time. So there's and I know that even on display today at the parade, you've seen the colour, you've seen the enthusiasm of the young people, and you've seen some very creative hairstyles, to say the least. But there's the Foyle Cup has been setting trends for young people over the summer for many years, and hopefully that'll continue for many years to come. So I just want to, as chair of this committee, on the day of the Foyle Cup parade, just to congratulate everybody that had a role to play in organising, and I wish all the teams success and in the week ahead. So that's the only item for chair's business. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, and just literally just want to come in and concur and be associated with your remarks in relation to the Foyle Cup. We were in the Guildhall Square today, just seeing the amount of people, thousands of children, families, coaches, everybody coming in, and the form being good. Now the sun was shining, you might not believe me when you look out now, but the sun was shining this morning, and I hope that everybody has a really successful week. Again, just to congratulate the people who have put in so much time in organising the event. It is one of the biggest events that we see within the city and district, and it just seems to be growing and growing and growing in numbers and area covered, because I know some of the teams are playing in Strabane, Buncrana, Letterkenny, all over the place. So it is just fantastic to see it grow. I think there's over 740 teams actually involved at this point, and the excitement on the children's faces, that's what it's all about. As you said, the hairstyle, the blonde, the pink, the greens, everything that you're seeing, just the buzz that it brings to the city. Again, congratulations to everybody that's involved, and that's grassroots sport at its absolute best. So thank you, Chair, for raising it.
Thank you. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair. And just similarly, just to associate ourselves with your remarks, I've just come from my wee boy's first match ever in the Foyle Cup, and I want to wish good luck to the parents on the sideline, because it was very hard to watch. I was spraying my wee boy's hair blue this morning before we left, so I am one of those. We're one of those. But you're right, the excitement and the buzz is just amazing until they get stuffed and then they're crying in the car on the way home. But hopefully that won't be every day. But it's brilliant for the city, and there's no doubt about it. What it brings is a class. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to matters of no. I think I skipped declarations of members' interest. Is there any declarations of interest? No. Moving on to matters arising from the open minutes of the governance committee held on Tuesday, the 4th of June, on pages 3 to 16. Is there any matters arising? No. So moving on to the papers in terms of this meeting, our first paper is item 7, the RIT support grant cuts. There's a very informative paper that was put together by Alfie. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Alfie for the work that was put into that. And I'll pass over to yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Members, 3, obviously a very comprehensive report, in particular the appendix 3. So 3 key purposes. 1 is to confirm our allocation for 24-25, which we've just been advised of. 2 is to provide you with further details in relation to the independent review that has been ongoing. And thirdly is for you to approve the detailed report that has been prepared to fully inform the review, and also, members, to facilitate any future engagement we have in relation to this issue and wider written issues. I think it's important to have a document that forms the basis of our engagement. So very quickly, by way of background, the grant exists to provide support on an annual basis to those councils whose needs exceed their wealth relative to other councils in Northern Ireland. The grant is statutory, but the quantum is discretionary. Unfortunately, our council has the highest entitlement to the grant, with our current allocation being 21.33%, and the overall pot has been very significantly reduced over recent years from 20.5 million back in 08-09 to 4.9 million in 23-24. So that's the background. The first key issue in today's report is that we've now been advised of our 24-25 allocation, and that shows a significant further 36% reduction. I suppose the only good news in that is we did budget for that as part of the recent rates process, although it obviously did have a significant impact on our rates process. But members, I suppose the bigger issue, if you see in the table in section 3.10 of the report, is that we've now cumulatively lost over 3.7 million of funding as a result of this, which equates to a rates impact of almost 5%. When inflation is applied to those figures, it's obviously significantly higher. So the direction of travel, members, indicates that likely further cuts will be implemented for the upcoming rates process, so that will be another challenge potentially we need to address. So the second key issue in the report, members, is the details of the review that's been initiated. So at last month's committee, You resolve that we write to the Minister seeking further information regarding the terms of reference, timescales, etc., and how councils will be engaged. So that correspondence has been initiated and it's attached in Appendix 2 for your reference, and you'll note the response that we received. Would point out, members, that councils have not been involved in any way in setting the terms of reference, and you did ask that the consultants would be invited to this committee. We haven't got, so when we meet the consultants, we'll relay that to them, but that hasn't been addressed in response to our correspondence. So members, just the terms of reference you'll see in the appendix, they're being carried out by business consultancy services. They have now requested to meet with the Chief Executive and myself on the 29th of July, this month, and we will obviously relay the request that our committee would like the consultants to attend a future meeting. The review is scheduled to complete in October, and the outcome will inform consideration by the Minister to enable a decision on whether the grant remains. So one point, members, that jumps out is that the amount of grant paid is beyond the scope of the review. However, the consultants have advised that they're content to collect views on the matter. So remember, suppose my key observations in relation to that is that I suppose there's 4 key flaws in the review. Firstly, it comes following a period of sustained cuts, which leads you to the inevitable conclusion that it may likely lead to an ultimate removal of the grant. Secondly, the grant can only be affected if it's adequately funded, so it's difficult to understand how the amount of grant paid is beyond the scope of the review. Thirdly, we believe that looking at it in isolation is flawed without placing it in reference to the wider rating system in which it sits. And finally, we would question why the review is seeking to understand how the grant is spent by councils, because in essence it's not really spent. It's a relief which is provided to every ratepayer within the district in recognition that the costs of services within impacted areas are higher and that property values are lower. So members, the final section of the report is basically dealing with how we respond to the review. You'll be aware that we've been engaging for many years in relation to this to no avail. So I suppose it now come to a critical point whereby we need to submit a very comprehensive and evidence-based response to this to promote meaningful engagement, and that a draft response has been included in Appendix 3 for your consideration in that regard. There's 5 areas to the appendix, members. I'll just quickly touch on each one of them. So number 1, it looks at the fundamental principles of our wider rating system in Northern Ireland and how it impacts ratepayers and less wealthy, more deprived in rural areas. So it's not surprising to note the evidence provided in the report that shows that ratepayers in these areas pay higher rates as a result. Secondly, the report looks at detail at the policy provision that has been in place. It looks at how the formula operates, and it provides analysis of how the cuts have impacted every council that receives the grant. Thirdly, members, we've included a specific case study in relation to our council, who are obviously the most specifically impacted. The 4th section looks at equality and rural needs concerns. One point you will note, members, is that a new equality impact assessment has been issued by the department in respect of its wider budget, but that the element relating to rate support grant has been screened out for equality purposes as minor impacts have been identified. We have obviously disputed that and saying that we don't see that a 3.75% rates impact across all the councils and an almost 6% rates impact in real terms can be regarded as a minor impact. And finally, the conclusion to the report includes a comprehensive response to all the questions that have been raised in the review, obviously informed by the previous section. So the final point, members, unfortunately we still don't have any update on the judicial review, which was heard back in October. So it's beyond our control. It'll be whenever the court makes its decision on that, but it's obviously disappointing that still hasn't been decided upon. All the financial impacts, equality and rural needs issues have been set out in detail in the report, and the recommendation, members, in the report is that you approve the detailed report in Appendix 3 to fully inform the review and facilitate future engagement by Council in respect of both the rate support grant and wider rating issues. Thank you, Chair.
Again, thanks, Alfie. Of one indicated speaker, Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, and Alfie, thank you for that really comprehensive and informative paper and report that is attached to it. Unfortunately, it's not great news. I have to say, in terms of the paper itself, you have really comprehensively set out the need for the rates support grant for this council area and why it is so important to us. In terms of equality, in terms of future proofing, we are a council area that has huge ambition. We want to get off our feet. We want to be able to wash our own face in terms of moving forward. But unfortunately, at this stage, we need the rate support grant to allow people that breathing space to move forward. I am really concerned that the department doesn't really have a clear understanding of the grant and what it is there for. I know in terms of the report, you're clearly setting that out. The review itself, it needs to be evidence-based, and our response very much is. I think that we need to be very clear around ensuring that the minister now is clearly aware of the grant, what it does, why it's there, why it was set up, and how we use it to ensure that as a council area, we don't have to overly burden our citizens in terms of paying for services that they get elsewhere. I think that we need to ensure that the minister is clear in terms of talking to, be it the finance minister, be it the executive, that the money needs to come into the department needs to be ring fencing that money, it needs to be back to the level that it was, and that the British Treasury needs to be stepping up. And I think that no matter what conversations we're having, we're talking about public services being funded below need. We have a change in British government, and that those conversations have been ongoing from the finance minister to the old British government, the Tories, and now the new in terms of the Labour government, in terms of making sure that we get our fair share, that we are getting enough money to run our public services, to run our services in a way that is taking them off their knees. And I think that the rate support grant is very much part of that whole scenario in terms of making sure that people get the opportunities, they get their fair share in terms of what they need, and that we can adequately pay for our public services. And I think that's what we're doing here. I think there is a huge piece in terms of the regional balance, and I think that has to be centred to it. And I think you have very clearly set that out in the report. So I suppose in terms of, we could call for further meetings with the minister, but in terms of the paper sets it out very, very clearly. And I know in the past we have had meetings with Minister Lyons in different roles. So he is aware of the very particular issues around the Northwest, and particularly around Derry City and Strabane District Council. So he is aware of that. I just hope that this paper is enough for him to realise the importance of the rate support grant for this council area. So happy to endorse the report. Look forward to the update from the JR, or the outcome of the JR, because I think that's probably going to be very key to how we move things forward. But I mean, it's disappointing that we're sitting with another cut. It is vitally important to us as a council area, and we can't state it enough, and you have done that in the report. So thank you, Alfie, for that.
Hey, thanks, Councillor Duffy, and I'm taking your endorsement of the report as a proposal. They support the recommendation. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alfie, for the report. And look, just wanted to say something first of all about the cut that we're receiving this year for our rate support grant. I mean, we are going to be receiving this year £666,500, and if we were receiving our allocation based on the original amount of funding, going back to 2008, the council would be receiving more than £4 million from the rate support grant, which is a huge amount of money that we desperately need. If it was adjusted for inflation, you could probably add a couple of million more. So the rate support grant for the Derry City and Strabane District Council is very, very important, and I think we've had that discussion many times in the chamber. And so it is very frustrating that we've had a massive reduction because of these cuts. And it's shocking, really. And I think maybe because of the election being called, there hasn't been enough discussion about the impact of that cut. And there's a few things to say about it. One is that, the restoration of Stormont, we were told there would be a prioritisation of addressing regional disparities, particularly for Derry in the northwest. And what message does this send, where we have the rate support grant being basically absolutely cut to shreds? In a period where we have lobbied harder and harder for it to be restored, and it's going in the opposite direction. So I think that this is a slap in the face to our council, but it's also a slap in the face to our ratepayers. And I'm glad in the report that you acknowledge that our ratepayers already pay a significantly more than ratepayers right across the north, based on our property values. So we're already asking our ratepayers to pay more. And now, it's going to be cuts like this that lead to more pressure and more burden on the council and on our ratepayers. So, it is frustrating. In terms of what you've put together, Alfie, in the report, I mean, I very much endorse it in terms of its content. I think we have to continue a very robust challenge to what the Minister is doing in terms of the reduction of the overall rate support grant. But any discussion that would see it obliterated completely is fundamentally unacceptable. So I think that this goes through in a very detailed way, why we need it, and what the impact is in terms of the loss of it. I would also want to add that, I presume that everybody in the chamber will vote for this here today, as they have backed all our motions in regard to the rate support grant at previous meetings. But I would also want to say, look, I think that executive parties that are actually at the table with the Communities Minister should maybe be, pressing the representatives here, should maybe press their representatives in Stormont a bit harder, because I'm not sure they're hearing loud enough what the impact of this cut is going to be, or all these cuts over the last number of years. I think more can be done by parties that say they oppose this in this chamber to get their representatives to take different action. Otherwise, it looks like it will be cut completely to shreds. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take your endorsement of the report as you seconded it, Councillor Harkin.
I'd be happy to, but I'm not a member of this committee, Chair.
No problem. I'll not make comment on some of the other points you had made. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm quite happy to second the report anyway, as a member of the committee. But I think a lot has been said from Councillor Duffy and from Councillor Harkin, and I would be in broad agreement with everyone. I think it's, I should say from the outset that Alfie's done a fantastic piece of work here, first rate. Quite happy to endorse that report going off. The evidence base is there. Alfie is over this completely, and we know that. And as Councillor Duffy said, and hopefully that may, brook some imagination with the Minister to find out that there is a problem here. But when I look at the paper and I look at the table, and from 2008 onwards, there's been a marked decrease within the rate support grant funding. And what appears to me, and I suppose our party, is like the gaping wound is where the grant calculation is statutorily based. The level of funding is discretionary. So therefore, it's never ring fenced completely. The amount of money which we rely on, because I look at it in our perspective as well, we rely on this funding because, to me, in my perspective, this is levelling up at its core for our council and from the administration in Belfast, that we need this money to level up for our ratepayers. And every year since 2008, bar 3 years, where there was a stasis or a plateau, it's gone down. So I'm quite happy to look on that report and to see what Alfie said. I fully agree with everybody else's thoughts. But unless Stormont and the Assembly put on a statutory basis the level of funding guaranteed to councils, and we're never going to see that. Plus, backed up with this review at the moment, gives you some insight into what the manager's intention is. I mean, is he going to do away with this model completely, or what's the view going to be? So, but we don't know this. In the last couple of months, we were sending off motions and letters to this year. You know, the best piece of work that we can send off now is going to be probably endorsed today and next week in full council, and that was Alfie's work in this year. I fully commend it, but it's extremely disappointing day that we have to get this letter, and again, it's another cut. And when we're facing another rates process shortly, we're going to be looking at this again and going, what's going to be the next option? But again, from our perspective, thank you, Alfie, and thank you and John and the SLT for their work into this year. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Alderman Hussey, did you want to come on?
Thank you, Chair, and apologies. Foyle Cup increases traffic about this town apparently, and quite a few other settlements throughout the area. Thank you, Alfred, for the report. It made interesting reading when I was preparing for the meeting. Points have already been made. And it's all, I suppose, it's all very well of us saying, right, you know, Stormont, give us the money. But where does Stormont's money come from? And we're looking at the Barnett formula, where we have the 24-25% shortfall, perhaps more. The historic shortfall, which all has to be dealt with. So as well as engaging with our ministerial team at Stormont, we need to be ensuring that those who are representing us at Westminster in the chamber are doing their job of pushing hard on the government party, which one party in this chamber claims to be a sister party of. And I hope that they will be working with the government party and ensuring that the fiscal imbalance that we endure in Northern Ireland is addressed, and is particularly badly felt in this part of Northern Ireland, and that is an issue that cannot be avoided. But certainly endorse the report and thank Alfie for the tremendous work that's gone into that. And we've got to use that report both internally within Northern Ireland, but more specifically at Westminster as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. If there's no further comments, we've got a proposal from Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Mooney, to endorse the recommendation and endorse the report. I'm not sensing any disagreement, so I'm going to take that as unanimous. And just on a comment on that, it's good to see, and it's encouraging to see the acknowledgement of the work that went under the report. Reading through it, it spelled out very clearly the importance of the rate support grant, and it encompasses all the discussions that's been happened within this chamber over many years. So a huge congratulations to Alfie, and it's great to see that that work has been acknowledged by this committee. So thanks, Alfie. Moving on now to the publication of the planning committee papers. I'm going to hand over to Philip.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this paper follows on from the notice of motion that came to the main council meeting, and the notice of motion is set out in paragraph 2.1 of the report. Members, the agenda and all open papers of the planning committee are made available for inspection by the public currently at the council offices in Strand Road and Derry, at the same time that they are made available for the public. At the same time as they're made available to members, that should read. Papers in relation to the planning applications are obviously published online in advance of the meeting, with the small number of remaining papers published online on the day of the committee. So on foot of the notice of motion, members, it is proposed that the agenda and all non-confidential papers of the planning committee will be published online at the same time that they are made available to members. Whilst that's sufficient to meet the requirements of the legislation in order to ensure maximum openness and transparency, it's proposed that the papers would continue also to be made available for inspection by the public at the offices in Strabane and Derry. We feel that that meets obviously the council's equality and rural needs issues. And there will be any online papers would be redacted as appropriate to meet data protection obligations. The proposed procedure would also ensure that the council continues to meet its statutory obligations under the 2014 Act. And so members are asked to note the contents of the report and endorse the recommendations that are set out in paragraphs 3.4 and 3.5 of the report.
Thank you, Philip. Councillor McGinley.
Mega Chair, and thank you, Philip, for the report. Just a comment, and I've got a small proposal of an amendment. That my reading of the original motion was that papers from all committees would be published in advance when members received their packs. So if it's possible to propose an amendment to 3.4 and 3.5, that it's all committees and not just the planning committee, I think it would be in the interest of open and transparency across the council as opposed to just planning. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Duffy, seconded. So you're proposing that we support the recommendation with an amendment, which is seconded by Councillor Duffy. Councillor Donnelly.
Mega Chair. Chair, the motion was that all committee and full council papers are released online at the same time as they're given to elected members. That was the basis of the motion. Has that happened? I know in the past there was there was a discussion in here when motions would be that there would be liaison between council officials and the proposer and that, and an update. Has has the motion been enacted that the papers are? Because I was talking to somebody who couldn't seem to find some papers for, I think it's the audit tomorrow and that. So can we get confirmation of that, please? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, well, I think in your initial point was the basis of the amendment, and I know that the purpose of this this paper is to enact that motion, but I'll pass over to Philip if you want to add anything further to that.
Yeah, so Chair, members, you'll recall that there was a paper that was recently brought in relation to the way in which motions would be progressed. And one of the things that was contained within that paper was that where members brought a motion, the implementation of the motion would then be the subject to a paper which would be brought forward to the relevant committee, which is the purpose of this paper, which is being brought in. Members, the motion had referenced the planning committee specifically, so the paper was brought forward on that basis, but that shows the benefit of this system, that members are clearly of the view that it should apply to all committee papers, so that can go forward then on the strength of the proposed amendment to the motion. So, yeah, members, that's the process that's been adopted by members now, that we would take forward motions on that basis.
And just for clarity, what's spelled out in the report, this would be in place for all meetings from September onwards. Councillor Mooney.
Just to say, we're quite content with that approach, Chair. So that's the way it should be. Obviously, all those papers should be published and free for when members get them, so the public should get them. So happy with the approach and happy from September onwards. Obviously, we're going on the recess now for August. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hargan.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, look, my assumption was that this would apply to all committees and all papers that were non-restricted. So, I'm happy to support the amendment, but I'm not sure that it was actually needed. But if it clarifies things, that's grand. And I want to thank Councillor Donnelly again for bringing the original motion. Just on I don't think that there was any negative that we were going to add something and then take away something, as in not have the physical papers for people. But I know that that's in there. So. But again, that's if it's clarifying that we would have access to both online and in paper. But there was no proposal in the original one to remove that option. So it seemed to me that would have been a possible takeaway from the motion. But I'm happy to hear that it isn't. All right, thank you.
Okay, so I'm hearing there's a proposal from Councillor McGinley, seconded by Councillor Duffy. they support the recommendations with the amendment to include all committees and full council and full council. So there's no dissenting voices. That's unanimous. I'm going to pass it on now to the annual performance report. Ellen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to invite members' consideration and approval of the draft annual performance report for 23-24, which is attached as Appendix 1. As members will well know, under the Local Government Act 2014, we're required annually to publish a performance report by the 30th of September. There's set out at 2.4 are the requirements that need to be covered in that particular report. And indeed, I would highlight that the report itself and our process is audited annually by the Northern Ireland Audit Office to ensure compliance with our performance duties. In terms of the key issues, the report at Appendix 1 is set out under the headings identified in 3.1, and the report also highlights some of the significant work that the Council has taken forward in the 23-24 year in delivering its mission and its corporate objectives, which again are linked to the Inclusive Strategic Growth Plan. For each improvement objective which we've identified, the report provides an assessment of performance and provides examples of initiatives undertaken. And in overall terms, it's concluded that there is evidence of improvement on the 22-23 year. I suppose as well, it's also noted that there are a number of statutory indicators and we've reported on performance in those, and where we've missed a target, the report identifies the rationale and details of corrective actions. The recommendation in front of members there is subject to your comments to approve for publication the draft annual performance report. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. Any comments? Members? Quite an extensive report. Councillor Duffy?
Yeah, I mean, the report contains an awful lot of information, but it demonstrates the volume of work that is going on right across the council. So I'm not going to go into any of the details on it, but just thank yourself, Ellen, and everybody who was involved in pulling it together. I mean, in terms of our council area, it just shows what we're doing and how well we're doing it. So thank you for the report. It's good to see. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Hussey?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report. Again, very comprehensive. Just within the report itself, capital development, capital projects completed or nearing completion or on site. For each of them, completion, and there's given a costing. I'll take the first one, completion of 80K upgraded pitch facilities, and it goes on through a list. Are those the final costs, or are those the costs that we initially established for those particular projects? And I note others within there, and I suspect that they're actually above the figure that we initially agreed. But I'm just wondering, the figure that's given there, is that the figure that it was contracted at, or the figure that it eventually ended up at? Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, those are the figures that are reported in the annual report of the Chief Executive's Service Delivery Plan, but there's nothing above the approved amount that would be actually included within that without approval from members. Thank you.
So there could be items in there which cost more than they originally thought they would, through circumstances that we understand, Jen.
I wouldn't have that information with me today, but I'll come back to you on it. Thank you.
Well, yeah, Chair, just to clarify, unless there's something specific that you wish to draw to our attention, there would have, the general process for a capital project would be to have, through this committee, the initial budget approved by members, but there have been, particularly over the last number of years with construction cost inflation, there have been a number of subsidiary reports brought through seeking approval of enhanced budgets for particular projects. So it is absolutely the case that there are some projects where the initial budget has been exceeded, but there has been a revised approved budget.
No, I sort of suspected that, Chair, when it looks at the city baths at 1 million and we know it costs more than 1 million. So yep, that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on the report and say thank you for it. It's obviously very detailed, but it's also interesting and user friendly. It was actually easy and interesting to read it, and the pictures and everything. It was a nice report to read. And just to agree with what Councillor Duffy has said, it's brilliant to actually see all the things that's happened over the year, because they're happening and you don't realise, or you do realise and you forget. It's really good to see it at the end of the year. So thank you for all the work on it. Thank you.
Councillor Mooney.
Sorry, Chair, just this one point that I just was thought about there was actually that it's a great reference, and thank you to Ellen, because if anybody asks me, what does your council do, then you can show them a report and go, this is what your council does on a yearly basis. And, you know, when it's broken down like that there, it neatly encapsulates all the departments and what has been undertaken throughout that year. So for me, it's a really valuable document for members. You can pinpoint things for members of the public. So thank you, Ellen. Thank you to council chairs.
Okay, if there's no further comments, I think and I know one of the things that was highlighted in the report is that the performance report indicated an improvement from the previous year, which is always, as a council, when we're striving to improve, it's important to recognise. So I just wanted to point that out. But the report itself has been proposed by Councillor Duffy. Alderman Hussey indicated support. You contend to second? So proposed by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Alderman Hussey. Is everybody in agreement? So it's unanimous. Moving on now back to Ellen for the civic recognition policy.
And through you, Chair, the purpose of this report is to seek members' comments and approval for a civic recognition policy, which again is attached to Appendix 1. The background of this particular piece of work is really in 2017, there was a proposal brought forward about the renaming of the Brandywell Stadium, and subsequent to that, there was also a naming proposal at the Melvin Sports Centre. Following those two exercises and obviously the pilot asset naming policy in 2018, it was recommended then that there would be a review of the pilot policy by the working group. And also, as I say, by means of background, we've also had occasions when there have been concerns raised about the process we have for the freedom of the city and district. Consequently, then the working group took on board those comments as well and extended their terms of reference, which are given in Appendix 2. To date, again, for background, there have been 17 meetings of the working group, the most recent one there at the end of May. And again, for information, there are approximately 16 requests which are sitting pending that review, which require consideration. The new proposed draft policy then focuses on the award of the freedom of the city and district, the naming of the council assets, and the installation of infrastructural elements in and around in or on council property or owned assets. Key considerations in informing the development of this policy was obviously learning from the pilot asset naming policy, experiences existing processes, and therefore there have been changes in criteria and our approach to consultation. The recommendation in front of members today is again subject to your comments that this policy is approved and it's reviewed after 12 months to ensure it meets your expectations. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. Councillor Heaney.
Thanks, Chair. And it's clear from the paper and the report, there's been an extensive piece of work done by those who were on that particular working group, and I want to just thank and congratulate them for all the work that they've done. I'm content to propose the paper and the policy, so just to put that forward.
Thank you, Councillor Heaney. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. And just as Councillor Heaney has said, Councillor Martin Reilly sat on this working group for us now, and unfortunately he couldn't be here today, but he has asked me to thank extensively the members who sat on it, but more importantly, Ellen and Kay McGaver, who is previous there, for the researches and efforts that they've gone on, because obviously this committee has been sitting the last 6 years, and they get to this point now where they can bring this from the work group and the committee is an achievement in itself. But certainly I'm happy to support and second the paper going through, and thanks to everybody for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Reference has been made to those of us who did sit on this, and that's welcome. But I think those of us who did recognise a tremendous amount of work that was done by Alan, and we thank you for that, Alan. I also welcome that within it we recognise it's not perfect, and the policy is subject to review within the 12 months or early if deemed necessary. So it's a work in progress, shall we say, but a tremendous amount of thought has gone into this. So, you know, happy that the report is there and to take it forward and to see where we go with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I know as somebody who sat on that working group latterly, I replaced Councillor Fleming on it in recent times, but I can concur with the sentiments that are expressed here. It's fantastic to see it's finally arrived at a position where a policy is being presented to committee. And it seemed not so long ago that this position would have been so far away. So I know it's huge relief to everybody that's been part of the working group, and no doubt to Ellen and the team for us to get in this position. But Alderman Hussey, you're spot on in relation to this. You know, this can't be a rigid piece of work. No, there needs to be flexibility, and the review period is only right. That so on reflection after a year, we can look to see what's working and what's not working. So it's a milestone moment that we didn't think we would get there not that long ago. So I know the proposals there's a recommendation with the report, and it's been proposed by Councillor Heaney, seconded by Councillor Mooney. If there are no dissenting voices, I'm going to take that as unanimous. Okay. Moving on now, back to Ellen for the constitutional change, the working group update.
Yes, and again, through you, Chair, this report aims to provide an update on the work of the Constitutional Change or Unity Working Group. It provides details of the outcome of the public call for evidence and, as I say, their outline outcomes, and to seek approval for the next steps. So again, following a motion in 2021, a working group was established. And also, as I say, in terms of the background as well, in 2022, a further motion was passed about constitutional change, which is detailed at 2.3. This particular working group has met on 8 occasions, and as part of the work, what we've done is we've identified various reports and sources of information and research in terms of the particular issue of constitutional change, and there's approximately 80 of those at the minute. They have now been collated and are available on the Members' Library and also on the Constitutional Change Hub on the Council's website. In furtherance, as I say, of the motion itself, there was a public call for evidence, and that was open between 16th of January and the 15th of April 2023. And subsequently, the results of that exercise were given to the members of the working group. As I say, the raw results of that engagement are given at Appendix 1, but indicated that the top 3 issues identified by respondents were the economy, health, and also governance issues. I would say as well that it obviously, as part of this process, the group had decided that further to the consultation process, there were options then for further alternative considerations or targeted engagement. In terms of, as I say, the exercise we've already done, it's noted in the report that the open call came to approximately 20,000 words of evidence and opinions that were actually submitted by members of the public. And in order to provide a robust and independent analysis that could be made for a wider dissemination, it's considered at this stage that an external expertise is required to undertake a qualitative analysis of results. And secondly, I suppose the initial point is that the original motion made reference to a number of stakeholder groups. So it's now being proposed that the stakeholders are invited to share their views with members directly on the issue of constitutional change. And that would take place in the form of a member workshop or a working group meeting in September for the first tranche. And that first tranche, it suggested that the local economy, health and trade union sectors represent their views on consultation on change and the implications for the council area. It's highlighted in the report as well. On that second motion, there was no progress in relation to the Taoiseach's shared island unit to present to council and to provide an update as necessary on activities and plans for the future. So consequently, the recommendations in front of members today is that the council again extends an invitation to the officials of the Taoiseach's office of the shared island unit to present to council. Also that approval is given to procure a specialist resource to undertake the qualitative analysis and prepare a detailed report on the results of the public call for evidence, and also that the initial workshop or working group meeting is organised for September to consider the views of the 3 stakeholder groups identified in the papers. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, Alan. One indicated speaker, Councillor Heaney.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alan, for the report. And as someone who sat on all 8 of the working group meetings, I'm happy to propose this particular item. As members can see from the presentation, there was extensive interest in phase 1 of this consultation from ratepayers, and the report's there. So this paper clears the way for us in the working group to look at the next phase of that. So it's important work, and it's a real welcome development. So I'm happy to propose.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Cook.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. And thanks, Ellen, for the report. I'm just wondering, out of curiosity, has there been, like much engagement or any input from members from the PEL community?
Through you, Chair, we certainly during the process had engagement from the group out in Brady. I'm trying to remember the Solace Centre and the Ulster Scots Agency as well. But I mean, this process hasn't been completed, and certainly we can tailor consultations to target engagement with particular groups. Members have always expressed the interest to have an inclusive process, so we would very much welcome any views from any sector within the community. So as I say, that's thank you for that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. As members in the chamber know, the unionist parties in this chamber have not engaged. I think there may have been a mistaken guest appearance on one occasion, but we'll not go into that. The parties have not engaged on it. I'm not prepared to support the recommendations. What was established, as far as we were concerned, was established by a majority of council as a talking shop, basically. Fair enough, talk all you want. But now we're seeing the approval to procure a specialist resource. Again, this is council funding, ratepayers' money. There are a considerable number of ratepayers who would not be in favour of utilising resources in that way. And with regard to constitutional change will come about at the democratic will of the people of Northern Ireland. And as far as I can judge, there is certainly no evidence that that the statistics are at that stage yet. So on that basis, I will certainly not be supporting these recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any further comments? Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Ellen for the report. And I attended the last meeting on the 31st of May, which was quite interesting, the update, and we had a lot of input from our own economist in here and different other factors. I would be somebody who would support this workshop because I think it's intrinsically important for any change in our island that we're involved in, no matter what aspect it is. And our council, Councillor Harkin was there, and Councillor Heaney and other members of his party were there, and I found the discussions extremely fascinating. And what would make it even more fascinating for me would be if all members of this chamber within the unionist tradition would be there as well, because their input is as vitally as important as ours and our views as well. So I read the report there and the recommendations, and I'm happy to second that report. So thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hargan.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to Ellen for drawing together the report for us. And I endorse the report as well. And I think that, look, there is a discussion happening amongst a lot of people about constitutional change, and I think people have a lot of questions about it. Will it make our lives better? Can we have a better health care system? Can we do something about climate change on an all-Ireland basis because rivers run north and south and east and west? I think that there's a lot of, that's the type of discussions I think that lots of people are having and thinking about it in maybe new ways. So I think I see that as a very positive thing. I am very eager to see, the legacy of partition ended as soon as possible. And when it comes to engagement, I think that we should, in terms of the stakeholder groups, there's other stakeholder groups that were included in the original motion, but I think we should put that offer of engagement out as widely as possible, because it's not all going to be through official channels. There's lots of people in communities who are not necessarily registered officially who are having this discussion. And the other thing about this to say about constitutional change is that there's not one idea of what a new Ireland would look like. In fact, there's lots and lots of debate about this, and very, very different ideas about what a different Ireland can look like and who will benefit and how people will benefit and who would lose out. And I think that discussion is very, very important. And because the type of new Ireland that I want to see is one where the vast majority of working class people in particular see their power increased, see their ability to shape their destinies increased, and where they see, a redistribution of wealth so that people do have a better life. And that would be true of people in the north and people in the south, and it would be true of people from all backgrounds, all communities, and people who don't identify with any of the main communities or identities here in the north. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And if there's no further comments, which I suppose isn't surprising, but the proposal that's been proposed by Councillor Heaney and seconded by Councillor Mooney isn't unanimous, which is unfortunate. But I think that this, and I know as being part of the working group, I know that there has been, unfortunately, an absence of or a lack of engagement from political unionism. There's no doubt about that. But it's clear that there's conversations taking place throughout the length and breadth of this council district, particularly within civic unionism, around what a new Ireland would look like and what's important to different sections of our community. So I think the report is asking us to continue that sectoral engagement in an inclusive way. That's what the proposer is proposing we do, which is seconded. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. All those in favour of the recommendations is contained within the report. All those against. That's, and any abstentions? So that's 8 for and 3 against, so that proposal has passed. Moving on now to the annual equality progress report. Is that Ellen again?
You Chair. This report seeks members' comments and approval in respect of the Council's annual equality report and action plan review of progress, which is attached at appendices 1 and 2 respectively. As is highlighted in the report, the Equality Commission requires us each year to prepare an annual progress report, and it's due with them before the end of August. Key issues identified in the report is really that we've made good progress in advancing this year, which is the last year of the current Equality Action Plan. And the report highlights that the majority of the Equality and Disability Action Plan elements have been completed during the period or are ongoing. The report also identifies a number of initiatives which have crossed a broad range of the Section 75 groups, and it highlights progress on the audit of inequalities, development of a new Equalities Duties Action Plan and the Disability Duties Action Plan. It also highlights that there have been 20 policies and initiatives and a range of service areas which were screened for equality and good relations impacts. Progress has also been made in building on equality of opportunity and good relations into and key initiatives, and also on day-to-day activities, and they're identified as again under 3.4. Also, it's noted again throughout during the year, a number of deputations and stakeholders represented in the Section 75 groups were received, and equality-related motions were also passed by Council. Again, some examples are provided in the report. So the recommendation for members today is subject to your comments that the annual equality report and action plan review is approved and submitted to the Equality Commission. Thank you, members.
Okay, there's yet another very detailed report in front of these members. Any comments? Councillor McGinley?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ellen, for the report. As you've said there, it is a very detailed report that it's a lot of good work that's gone into it. So on our behalf, on behalf of Sinn Féin, we're happy to propose the recommendation.
Councillor McDade?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Ellen. We're happy to second it as well.
In the absence of any further comments or any dissenting voices, can I take that as unanimous? Yep. And their final report for decision today is it's a nod to the time of year we're in, but it's the delegated authority to the chief executive during summer recess. And
This is a procedural issue and has worked very well in the past. I propose the recommendation.
okay. So that's proposed by Councillor Hussey, or Alderman Hussey, seconded by Councillor Mooney. Everybody in agreement? Okay, items 14 to 19 are open for information. Councillor Mooney?
Just a note that in item 14, just a possibility of reverting back to WebEx fairly soon for meetings anyway, so I welcome that as well. I'm sure all members in the chamber will welcome that paper anyway, but just they note it and they say thank you to the Philip and the speed of the minister in bringing this forward. Thank you.
Okay, well, it sort of shows the difference of opinion, because I certainly didn't welcome that paper. Councillor McGinley on item 14.
Just on that one, I read it. and the legislation, it said that it came into effect from the 25th of June. Have we any indication as to when it's going to take effect for this council, or when the amendment can be made to a standing order? Because I sort of would have expected it to be within the paper if it was already in effect through the legislation.
Yeah, the plan would be to bring a paper with proposed amendment to standing orders for the September committee, which would then mean that it would be implemented from the October round of committees. But certainly if any members have any comments in relation to the pre-existing scheme that they want to bring to officers' attention, if they want to do that over the summer recess, and we'll note that and reflect it in any paper.
Thanks, Bob. I think it might be worth a way of explanation why we, officers felt it was best to wait till after the recess to present a draft change to standing orders, just as a way and explanation of why we're not sitting in front of us now with a draft standing orders to come into effect from September. So if an explanation would be helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, so members, just it reflects the fact that there hasn't been a unanimity in approach in relation to this across the 11 councils in terms of how they intend to proceed now the new legislation comes in. The new legislation is one that gives the councils the power to have these meetings. It doesn't require councils to have these meetings. It doesn't require them to have them for all meetings. They can adopt whatever approach that they want in relation to that, and that's why the legislation, one of the changes in the legislation from the legislation that was in place during the coronavirus period is that a change to standing orders is required. Currently, members, a minor change to our standing orders to implement the protocol that was in place prior during the COVID period would basically restore things to the way that they were. But I know some councils, for example, have indicated that they are prepared to only allow committee meetings to be in a hybrid format, but not the full council meeting. Some councils are looking at the planning committee meeting not being in a position to go forward on a hybrid basis and so on. So there isn't a unanimity of approach at the present time. And it was certainly felt that officers wanted to have an opportunity to consider possible options and present those to members in September in terms of how the council wished to proceed, and let members make a decision then as to how the council goes forward. Obviously, it's only one round of meetings effectively that are going to be impacted by this, just the September meetings, as we'll then have the paper in before you for GNSP in September, and we'll go forward from October.
Thank you, for Alderman Cook.
On item 15, the mayoral headed paper, I was just wondering, where would Arabic fit under our trilingual, existing policies? On item 15, just where would Arabic fit within our trilingual existing policies that we do have?
Through you, Chair. The report highlights that the trilingual policy is hopefully highlights that the trilingual policy is English, Irish and Ulster Scots, which is under the European Charter itself. But the mayor and the mayor normally would have discretion in order to identify languages. Traditionally, they have stuck to within the three languages, and in most cases it's been English and on its own, and English and Irish. But the mayor was very, very keen to highlight the cultural and linguistic diversity in the area, and obviously wanted then to put Arabic on the headed paper as well, and the rationale for that is set out in terms of the prominence of Arabic as a language set out in the paper. Hopefully that answers your query. Thank you.
I was just wondering then, because for inclusivity reasons, like Polish would be the largest minority speaking, within the district. And, I was just wondering, due to all the other languages, I was just wondering, would we not just, if we can't include them all, should we not just stick to the trilingual that we do have, the existing one?
Okay, I think that's, and I know the paper and Ellen has outlined that this is the discretion of the mayor. I think that's probably a question that would be that only the mayor can answer. So you will have an opportunity at full council if you still wish to ask the mayor directly a question. Alderman Hussey?
Similar, Chair, I was presuming that this lies within the prerogative of the mayor and lies within the mayoral budget as opposed to any other budget. So, as I say, it can be raised again at full council when the mayor's there if needs be. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other items for information?
Chair, item 16, can I just welcome the follow-up on that issue of external bodies? Just one question. If we write to somebody and we get replies, we hope to get replies, but if we don't get a reply, where do we go from there? Do we assume that if there's no reply, that organization is no longer active? Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I mean, obviously, we're writing out again to people, but if we don't get a follow-up or a reply this time, what we'll do is try to contact them or use some other means to see if they're still active. But certainly my worry would be that we've made nominations at the annual meeting on the basis that those groups exist. But we'll certainly bring back a report to members if we find anything untoward. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, thank Ellen for that. You know, I think we have to avoid some organisations going through a paper exercise in this sort of scenario. So that is to be welcomed. Thank you.
Councillor Duffy, on this item?
No, not a separate item.
No, go on ahead. No, wait, hold on is there anybody else want to come on item 16? Go on ahead, Senator.
Okay, no, I just wanted to come in and comment on item 17, which is the provision of free period products. I just want to welcome it. I think that it seems like a very, very long time ago that 2018 that we were the trailblazers in terms of this council being the first on this island to take forward this piece of or this motion in terms of period poverty. I'm glad that we took that initiative. I'm glad that it really seemed to take off after that with other councils following suit and then with the legislation coming through the Assembly. So it's fantastic to actually see it in place. And I just want to comment as well on the ball campaign because those girls in Scotland were absolutely amazing. I was actually in contact with one of them on Saturday on a completely separate issue, but just out of the blue. So in terms of the work that they did on this really important issue as well, I think that we have come a long way. Unfortunately, period poverty still very much exists. But it's good to see that we are in a place where steps are being taken. So welcome a piece of positive legislation that has been passed through the Assembly. Thank you.
Okay. Any further items for open for information? No. Can I ask for a proposer and a seconder to go into confidential? Proposed by Councillor Mooney, seconded by Councillor McGinley.